Let's move on to ADB. ADB also being talked about a lot. The Agricultural Development Bank has suspended plans to float about 100 million shares on the Ghana Stock Exchange until consultations with the Workers' Union are concluded. The decision was arrived after a meeting between management of the bank, the Workers' Union, and the Employment and Labour Relations Minister, Haruna Idris. So we're also told that leadership of the workers has accused the management of exercising poor judgment, supervising an abysmal performance, and conflict of interest. My question is, where do we go from here? Is this just a temporary halt and then we'll come back to the same issue?
Yeah, that's what the instruction for the minister means. You see, when you want to implement a very important project of that nature, you need to you need to bring along all stakeholders involved for them to understand the concept. You know, change management in itself is a big issue. That's how come I say that, you see, corporate managers of this country should know what corporate governance is all about. You cannot just get up in a day and want to change. Change is a big process. So you need to go through a lot of processes if you want to change. And it is not easy for human beings to take a change, whether it's going to be positive or negative, because it is an area of unknown. Maybe the listing will even help the employees in the long run. But because of the area of unknown, they may reject it. So you need to take them through a lot of process. Those days, you need to engage a lot of consultants. You need to have a lot of meetings with the senior management, the junior management. I'm not very sure whether the management of ADB has done a lot in these directions. I think that's one of the reasons why the minister is saying that, yes, on policy-wise, government policy is that we want to list ADB into the Ghana Stock Exchange. But maybe because of the processes and the implementations of the policy, there's some difficulty and challenge. So let's halt the processes and ensure that we are able to have a lot of stakeholders consultations and before we move ahead. And this is simple instructions, and it's done everywhere. If we are implementing a project and there are challenges, you need to halt it and then look at the critical issues involved before you move ahead.
You know, the workers keep bringing this issue of conflict of interests. And at a point, they even called on the managing director to step aside. There seemed to be something not going on well in that bank.
The point is that if there's a problem in every organization, who are they supposed to blame? Or if you suspect any problem in the organization, the point is the head. So for me, it's not a straight thing, because if there's any difficulty in this organization, the first person to call on is the general manager or the MD in charge. So for me, what the workers are calling for is the right thing. And that's why I said there's a minister responsible for that particular sector. They need to investigate the issues. There were a lot of allegations made by the management. For me, what I think is that they need to investigate the issue, interrogate the issues, and find out. Because in this country that we are, it is easy to make allegations. It is easy to just come out. But when you ask people, and they should come and prove, that is where the difficulty is. So I think that, as said by the minister, is going to ensure that he interrogate the issues, investigate the issues before moving ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Mr. Chum, should the manager step aside whilst all these go on?
See, I think that is a bigger thing than just the manager stepping aside. Because, I mean, a couple of years ago, we all thought that ADB was on the track to, they were doing some rebranding, opening new branches.
Oh, somebody said they changed the big A to a small A.
Right, and so from the outside, it looked like they're on to something big. Now, you come back 2 to 3 years down the line, we're having all of these issues. As far as I'm concerned, let's get to the bottom of it, because, you know, there's a classic example of what happened at Merchant Bank and the takeover and some cronies of the government.
Is it the same thing?
No, that's what I'm saying. That listen, you see, sometimes perceptions. I mean, all of these rumors. He's saying they are rumors, but it needs to be investigated. because it's a state-owned bank, right? And every single Ghanaian has a stake in it. Now, if it has to be listed, fair enough, because in my personal opinion, I don't think that the state really has any business doing business, if it sounds right. The state is meant to be an enabler. Everywhere in the world, people have moved away from the state having direct responsibility for running banks, for instance, financial institutions. So we can move away from that. But it has to be done right. You have to go through the right systems to make sure it's open, fair, and transparent, so that it doesn't give the impression that it's been offloaded to a certain group of people like it did in the past, right? But for me, how come we find ourselves here? It's even quite strange to me, right? This is a bank that is supposed to be pro-agric, right? And agric is a huge sector where you can tap into the various value chain and make sure that your bank is viable, from production, from transportation, to marketing, storage. It's a huge sector, right? So maybe we should also look into the management of the bank as to what kind of people are actually put there. Is it a case of, square pegs in round holes? Is it a case of jobs for the boys and people are there not based on merit? Because as far as I'm concerned, it shouldn't be rocket science to run a bank which is pro-agric.
So are you thinking that, for instance, some persons there may not necessarily deserve to be working there because they may not have the understanding of what the bank should be doing?
From the way I'm not a banker, right? But from where I sit, it's not rocket science to run a bank which is pro-agric. Again, we've had new banks that have even come to the system. Recently, I hear that Stanbic actually overtook ADB as the 5th largest bank in Ghana. How long has Stanbic been in the country, right? So if they can come into the country with other banks, all these new banks, Nigerian banks, other foreign banks, have come into the country and they are doing well, why is there any excuse for ADB not to do well, to be going through all of these things? Those are questions that we need to be asking ourselves. I think that there's always a tendency to sort of absolve the real protagonists when it comes to these things. If it's ADB, we have Bank of Ghana that has shares in there, right? It's under a particular ministry. There's a board of directors, there's an MD, there's a management team. We should hold them accountable. Now, anytime these things happen, then we take the easy option out. The easy option is that, oh, let's offload some shares, let's do this, let's that. And then the people that are supposed to even be held culpable, right, will come out and will give you a plethora of reasons why they haven't done what they are mandated to do. Right, so if he's been given a mandate to turn the bank around, and as we speak today, the bank is in some kind of dire straits, maybe he shouldn't be there. It's not personal, but my point is that everybody gets some kind of mandate. In every corporate environment, people are given targets, right? And per your performance, you are judged as to if you've done well or not. But you don't come back after that set period and be given the people who mandated you to do the job all the excuses in the world.
Okay.
In my opinion, for instance, this whole brouhaha about the office block being sold and everything could have been handled properly. If, for instance, you say to me that only 40% of your staff are housed in that place, so you want to expand. For me, I think it's a business decision. It's not a big deal. But it's the way you go about it.
So you all agree on the processes, because that's what Mr. Damoji also. But I also want to ask, what are your expectations with this temporary halt in place now?
As far as I'm concerned, per the track record of this particular government, doesn't much ado about nothing. Workers' concerns, you'll listen to them, but you'll still be the same Yentio mantra. They'll still go ahead and do it.
Honorable Damoji.
Yes. You see, when people go on that tangent, I have a difficulty. Because when you transcend administrations, people sell every administration, because of difficulties in management, sell state-owned enterprises. Then we can label everybody to be incompetent. You understand me? But I can tell you for sure, that small companies or small countries manage their own telcos. But we sell our own. Does it mean that people who are managing the country at that time are incompetent? Is that the way we want to portray this? So I have difficulties with the kind of assertion that the fact that ADB is having a difficulty, there's a policy decision that let's list them. And that is
but I'm not sure he said that for a fact. He was exploring, he was also thinking about the possibilities.
I heard him loud and clear.
You're not listening to me, man.
And listen attentively. That's why when people are talking, I don't talk. I'm a very good listener. I'm a very good listener. So the point is, I
asked about your expectations.
My expectation is one key, is to ensure that the minister put up an investigative team in place to investigate the allegations that were made by the staffs of the company and the Unicorp, to be precise. And it is the investigation report that will enable the minister to say whether they are supposed to dissolve the board or whether they are supposed to suspend the managing director. But in the first place, I agree frankly that our difficulties in this country, the problems that we are facing, I've been saying it all over, is because we don't set key performance indicators for ourselves and go according to it. It is not today or tomorrow. That has been the trend. And that's what we should be heading towards as a country. That at the end of every year, at the end of every quarter, or you should know whether you should still be the MD of the company.
Yeah, but I mean, shouldn't a bank like ADB have that in place, even if the country doesn't have?
No, that's the point I'm making. That is the way we do it. That is what we should be heading towards to. That even I say it in a lot of programs, that even it will help even our president and our ministers if we set up a key, we call it key performance indicator, KPIs, for ourselves. If you work in a multinational before, I've worked in a multinational organization before, at the end of every quarter something pop up, your own KPIs pop up, you need to fill them, the ratings will come, so you know whether at the end of the year or at the end of the quarter you are qualified to be still being.
But I thought ministers now have something like that.
The president came out with.
Yeah, we're supposed to be marking them according to something.
Yes, if there are proper marking and monitoring system, then if you are a minister and because it is the organization under you that makes up the total. It is not you alone, your performance. Do you get the point I'm making? All the ministries and departments under you are part of your KPIs. Whether if ADB is under you, all that I'm trying